This is CBC Compass.
This is Monday, February 24th. Here's what's happening now on Prince Edward Island. There was a heightened sense of anxiety and awareness at island schools today after police got a tip about someone bringing a firearm to an unnamed PEI school. The threat was deemed non-credible, but it had many asking questions today. Charlottetown police are reporting a recent surge in thefts from vehicles, 10 since Friday morning, and 4 of those cases, windows were smashed to gain entry. Plus, building plans, a huge housing project is being proposed for a lot of land behind the Charlottetown Mall. The hope, 300 units over the next 10 years. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Compass. I'm Louise Martin. Island police officers are still trying to find out who threatened to bring a firearm into a school. They already determined the threat isn't a credible one, but there were increased patrols in and around schools today. Nicole Williams has been following this story since it started and joins me tonight. Nicole, what's the latest on the investigation?
Well, Louise, we heard from RCMP just a few hours ago. They say it was a quiet day in island schools. There were more officers both in and out of uniform in and around schools. In a statement, they told us there were no incidents that constituted a threat or appeared to be related to the information that had been passed on to law enforcement last Friday afternoon, and that we will continue to investigate any concerns that we become aware of. It is our hope that over the rest of the week, the schools in the province can return to normal operations. Now, since a last-minute press conference about the threat last night, RCMP say they've received more leads from the public, but nothing that's convinced them the threat was credible. We also spoke to Charlottetown Police today. On their end, they say there was a lot of anxiety at schools today. Take a listen.
People were anxious, and there were some students that were anxious. I did address staff and the guidance staff, and you know, they were good, and they understood that this was low credibility in relation to this threat.
And Nicole, what did Charlottetown Police say about the investigation today?
Well, Tim Kaiser also told me that officers did in-person interviews over the weekend with anyone of interest. He also reinforced much of what RCMP said. They're still looking for the original tipster who reached out to police Friday afternoon. That person told police that someone was planning to bring a firearm into an island school. The source of the threat is still unknown and no specific school or area was targeted, but police launched an investigation into schools across the province over the weekend. Now, again, they say they haven't found any substantial evidence on this threat, but they say they wanted to hold that press conference last night to squash any rumors that may have been out there.
And what about parents, Nicole? How are they reacting to this news?
Yeah, well, Louise, there was lots of discussion online about whether or not parents would be sending their kids into school today. Schools were open, but we know attendance was down by at least 20% today. That's about double the usual amount. The school board says it will monitor attendance for the week. We spoke to one parent who told us she decided to keep her kids home today and thought that schools should have been closed altogether.
To not close the schools on Monday, I felt like you close the schools for a chance of 10 centimeters of snow, but not for a chance of gun violence.
But police say that it is safe for students to be in school, and that's where they belong. The public schools branch sent out a letter late today saying anyone with any concerns should reach out. And again, RCMP say that investigation is going to continue.
All right, Nicole, thanks for this. That's Nicole Williams reporting in studio tonight. Well, UPEI and Holland College also took extra security measures today. Holland College says it normally has no security working at its campuses during the day. Today, though, it's hired 6 private security guards. There was also a police officer patrolling the Charlottetown campus and one in Summerside as well. The college says while police determined the threat was not credible, it thought the additional security would help give students and staff some peace of mind.
Paramount importance is really the security of our students and staff, as well as providing them that sense of security on our campuses. So having the visibility of the additional officers, as well as security present on our campuses, will hopefully provide that additional sense of reassurance that we took this threat as something and we're not just going to brush it off.
UPEI also closely monitored its campus today. The university issued a message to staff and students on its safety app. There were extra campus police officers working as well. Charlottetown police are investigating a raft of thefts from cars over the weekend. There were 10 of them, and the people doing them are also smashing windows to get in. Brian Higgins reports.
Locking your car at night is standard advice, but sometimes even that isn't enough. Charlottetown police say car windows were smashed in 4 of the 10 incidents reported over the weekend. Police say the incidents took place all over the city between Friday and Sunday, from downtown all the way to rural outlying areas. Items stolen include purses, wallets, credit cards, even jewelry. There's no dollar estimate of the total thefts or the damage done to vehicles that had their windows smashed. Police say pilfering is a long-standing problem, and breaking windows to get in is not unheard of.
It happens periodically. Some of these individuals that partake in this type of criminal activity are determined. If they see something that catches their interest in the vehicle, they're not opposed to smashing the window, making a quick grab and vacating the area.
Some of the stolen credit cards were put to quick use. Police say they were getting reports this morning of illegal use of victims' cards. Police say they are now reviewing surveillance video from street cameras as they try to figure out who's responsible. RCMP continue to investigate similar smash and grabs from vehicles last week in Stratford. Charlottetown police recommend people lock their cars, report suspicious activity, and don't leave valuables in plain sight. And better yet, don't leave them in cars at all. The investigation continues. Brian Higgins, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Well, there could soon be a huge housing project behind the Charlottetown Mall. There is a proposal for 300 units over the next 10 years, and there are plans to change the traffic flow in that area as well. Wayne Thibodeau has more.
Behind the Charlottetown Mall sits a 14-acre parcel of land which could be transformed into the city's latest housing development. Plans include a mix of apartments with underground parking, duplexes, a medical clinic, and affordable housing units. The project is called Sherwood Crossing.
We're talking about 300 units over the next 10 years, and all of that has to work with the infrastructure, and it has to work with the road system and so on, and it's got to be a good fit for the neighborhood.
But all that new housing will create even more traffic here, so the city is going to build a new road. Instead of traffic cutting through the mall parking lot, it'll go down a new road. It will run parallel to the Confederation Trail and connect Towers Road and Spencer Drive, near Canadian Tire. The city has already approved $650,000 towards the road.
We have traffic issues out in this area. We don't really have a proper city street that takes us from Towers Road over to University Avenue. What they've been using up until this point in time is the parking lots on the perimeter of the Charlottetown Mall.
The project goes before the city's planning board on March 2nd. The city plans to hold a public meeting to get input from area residents. If the city gives the project the green light, Banks says he will proceed with the first phase of the project, 80 townhouses, within the next year. Wayne Thibodeau, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Hospice PEI is looking for more volunteers. It wants to expand services into long-term care facilities. Hospice volunteers help people who are affected by a life-limiting illness. And the organization says more people are requesting visits in long-term care homes. Volunteers have to do 30 hours of training, and sessions will begin next month. Well, a big congratulations tonight to PEI's Lauren Lenentine. She is now a world champion curler. Way to go. Lauren is third from the left in this picture you see here. She plays on the Manitoba junior team and won the championship on the weekend. The women beat South Korea in the final on Saturday. So well done to the whole team, but especially to Lauren from PEI. Much more still to come on Compass tonight before 7 o'clock. Coming up, more on the school threat on PEI that police deemed to be non-credible, but of course, it still made people anxious today. So how do you explain it to your child? Ontario provincial police officers have moved against the rail blockade in Ontario. We'll have the very latest on that. And there are new cases of COVID-19 as the rate of infection goes up in places like Italy now. We'll have the latest on that story. So all that is coming up. Weather with Jay Scotland. He's fixing his computer as we speak, as we take a live look outside on this Monday evening. So we're back with your full weather forecast and all those details in just over 3 minutes' time. Stay with us. Well, there were a few technical gremlins hiding in Jay's weather computer tonight, so weather's a little bit delayed, but we're going to get it all for you right now. It was an abundance of sunshine on PEI today.
We're not going to have the full 7-day forecast, just 2.5 days, though. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Everything's fine. Sometimes computers just...
They glitch.
You know, you got to kick the front tire and... You know,
what
hang
happens.
on the hood and get it working again. But it's working.
We stalled as long as we could.
I was this close to getting, colored pencils and drawing weather maps old school.
We've done it before.
I have done that before, actually. All right, let's take a look at our, and this is what I was going to show you a little earlier on Compass, and something I think a lot of folks do count on for getting the kids off to school, getting yourself to work in the morning, and that is looking ahead over the next 24 hours. So tonight, we'll start with that. We'll watch for those clouds to increase through the overnight hours. More cloud than sun tomorrow, but we're going to look at afternoon temperatures between +1 and as warm in some areas as 4 or 5 degrees on the plus side. So it's going to be very mild again tomorrow. We do have more wintry weather in the forecast long range, but there's a look at your next 24 hours. And now let's take a look at our temperatures this hour across the Maritimes. And yay, my computer is working. That's great. My weather clicker is not failing me. All right, +1 in Charlottetown, a bit warmer as we look back into New Brunswick and parts of southern Nova Scotia, 10 degrees in Greenwood, Nova Scotia right now. We're sitting at +1 at Charlottetown Airport, so here on the island between 0 and 3 degrees. Just to give you an idea of where we should be, we were over 3 degrees at Charlottetown Airport for a daytime high yesterday. We should be between -2 and -3 for a typical or seasonal afternoon temperature, and closer to -12 for overnight temperatures. So we are well above that on both fronts. The mild stretch will continue for the next few days, but we do have cooler air that will build back in as we get into the weekend, and we may even have more snow in the forecast as well. Winter is not done just yet. Winds have been out of the south, part of the reason, combined with that sunshine, which is now getting higher in the sky, and we're having longer daylight hours. We saw those milder temperatures today. Pretty quiet conditions this hour across the island. We do have a few increasing clouds that will start to build late this evening, and then those clouds will start to fill in. Not overcast, but they'll start to fill in into your Tuesday morning. Area of low pressure to our north. We're still under the influence of a ridge of high pressure, but as that low moves north of the Gaspé Peninsula towards as we look up towards Labrador, we will watch for a bit of cloud cover to start to build in late this evening and through the overnight hours tonight. I'm not expecting it to be as overcast as this forecast model is painting a pretty cloudy picture here, but breaks of sunshine with more cloud than sun to start your Tuesday morning, and that's likely going to be the case through the afternoon. Now, we will see light and variable winds develop in the afternoon after some light west to southwesterly winds in the morning. We do have a system that is approaching from our south and east. This will bring some showers and some rain to the Atlantic coast of Nova Scotia. For us, just maybe a few brisk northeasterly winds, not too gusty, developing late afternoon and into the evening tomorrow. So we're avoiding this one. That would be a rain event, by the way. We do have another storm system that we're tracking for Thursday that could bring enough snow to make roads a bit messy. So accumulating snow is certainly a possibility later in the week, followed by those cooler temperatures. Definitely not cool tonight. Temperatures between -1 and -2 over western PEI. We will look for those clouds to be increasing into the overnight hours through early tomorrow morning. And afternoon temperatures tomorrow between 1 and 3 degrees over western PEI. May even be a smidge warmer as we look to areas further east. So central eastern parts of the island tonight between -1 and -3 for those overnight low temperatures. As we get into the afternoon tomorrow, on the plus side again between 2 and 4 degrees for most areas. And I would not be surprised. You look into the larger expanse of inland areas over Kings County, that we even see an afternoon temperature reach maybe 5 degrees. So anywhere from +1 to +5 will be the range of afternoon temperatures tomorrow across PEI. So on the plus side for all, and a little bit warmer for some, more cloud than sun, and winds will be fairly light and pretty variable through the afternoon. We'll see a mix of sun and cloud on Wednesday. Temperatures back down around or just below the freezing mark. That's still slightly above our seasonal average. And then Thursday afternoon, evening would be the timing of our next snow event. It's not going to be huge, but some forecast models are hinting at over 10 centimeters. So we're going to keep our eye on Thursday, tapering off to flurries as we get into your Friday. Shouldn't be too messy, and I know that Friday for the public schools branch is a PD day anyway, so we're not talking about a snow day potential here. And then as we get into the weekend, this is where we start to see those temperatures cooling back down. Some brisk winds on the back end of that storm system will really open the door for winter to return, which is a good thing because starting Friday and for much of next week, we're doing our backyard rinks tour I was kind of getting scared that it would be a backyard pool or pond tour. So some good news on that front. Nice reprieve from the cold, but back to more seasonal temperatures as we get into the weekend. Now let's take a look now at our national temperatures across the country. Pretty mild over the eastern half of the country, really much of southern Canada looking at pretty above seasonal temperatures, but we do have another pocket of cold air that is sinking in from the north, and we'll start to see that moving in as we get a bit closer to the weekend, Friday into Saturday. All right, let's take a look at our photo of the day now. Leslie sent this one in from a beautiful sunset walk along the Charlottetown Boardwalk over the weekend. And I don't know how cute that is, or it can look a little creepy, but you can see all those faces then with pine cones and chunks of ice that have been piled up there on the rocks beside the boardwalk there.
Is it pine cones?
Yeah, I think they're pine cones and rocks, yeah. It's hard to tell unless you get real close to your TV.
Snowballs? I don't know.
They're chunks of ice, I believe, that she picked out, or somebody picked out and did from the rocks there beside the boardwalk. Looks great with the sun setting in the background. Peekaboo is all I have to say. All right, get us your photos. We love showing them off. That one was hilarious. compass@cbc.ca to do that by email. You can always give us a follow through social media. Share your photos on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as well. Just check out CBC PEI. Louise and I would appreciate a follow as well. All the details can be found on our website.
All right, thank you, Jay. Still ahead, an investigation continues after police say they received an anonymous tip that someone would bring a firearm to an Island school. Now, the threat was deemed non-credible, but still the incident has parents and students asking lots of questions. So to help with that, Constable Tim Kaiser is my guest after the break. Stay with us.
I'm Mitch Cormier. Tuesday on Island Morning. Right now, lobster blood is washed straight down the drain in processing facilities. A researcher in Maine says someday that blood could be worth more than the lobster meat itself. We'll explain on the next Island Morning.
As you heard earlier tonight on Compass, police say a threat made to an island school was not credible, and all island schools were open today. But many students and parents perhaps had some questions about school safety, guns, and whether they should be worried. Charlottetown Police School Liaison Officer Tim Kaiser is my guest tonight. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
So what was it like for you today on the job? Did you get extra questions from students?
Well, my day started actually by addressing the guidance and it also addressing the teachers and making sure they were aware of what was going on. And there were questions from students, absolutely, that were anxious and whatnot. We had received calls from various people, and I had staff that was approaching me saying that schools were on lockdown, and this was not the case. You know, lockdown is a very serious thing. Now, if we lock down some entrances into the school so that, just for today only, because it was specific, the threat was specific for today. And if we had students entering through one door, that was the option of the school to decide that that's how they were going to implement their entrance into the school for that school day.
So that's what some schools did?
That's what some schools did. And if they did that, that's fine. That is not lockdown. Lockdown is something very different.
So do you think that was just kids chatting on social media?
Again, I don't know how it was facilitated, but I do know that it caused some serious stress and anxiety amongst students who had friends at other schools, amongst parents who had students at those schools, and amongst teachers who had friends and staff and family at those schools.
So for the record, there was no lockdown today?
There was no lockdowns today.
Now, gun violence or the threat of gun violence on PEI is thankfully not something that we have to worry about and even talk about too much. So a lot of parents may not know how to talk to their kids about that. What's your advice there?
Well, the reality is that you know, they're prepared. We have things called lockdown drills in the schools, and that's done for a reason, to be prepared in the event that something should ever take place. Now, in this instance, it was, as was stated earlier, it was deemed low credibility, and it was something that was really that we weren't putting any stock into at this point in time, but we still operated on the side of caution. And extensive interviews were done and an investigation was done. We were fortunate that this came in on a Friday, which allowed us all weekend in order to investigate this thoroughly.
So when you say the investigation is ongoing, so the threat was deemed non-credible, but what are police working on now? What are the next steps in this?
Well, at the end of the day, in order to try to alleviate that sense of anxiety amongst parents and students and staff, you know, we're trying to find out who placed the call and trying to work backwards and see who made this comment.
Was there an increased police presence around schools today?
There was an increased police presence around schools. Yes, there was today. In the municipalities in Charlottetown and Summerside, that we had plainclothes officers in the junior highs and then the senior highs today.
Will that continue through the week, or?
Again, it's not something really that's sustainable through the long term, but as you know, we do have school resource officers in both of the municipalities, and police presence is an ongoing thing through the junior highs and the senior highs as a result of this.
Talk to me a little bit about what people need to know about making a threat, even if they have no intention of doing anything or following through on their words, but that could be a criminal offense.
Yes, we have to be very careful in what we say, especially like when you're talking about things like guns and or bombs or anything of that nature. When you make those types of threats, and whether or not you're having in this case, since we're talking about school ages, when we make those type of comments, if somebody's within earshot, or we make them to a friend, or even out of anger or just frustration, there is a consequence, and it puts a great amount of stress on a lot of different systems when somebody there's a lot of negativity that comes out of a comment like that, and it involves a lot of work from a lot of different people once something like that's heard and said, and it sets a lot of wheels in motion.
And there was a lot of coordination, right, within this investigation?
There was a lot of communication within this. We were dealing with the school boards, the Departments of Education, Department of Justice and Public Safety. Government officials were involved in this right from the beginning, and all the police departments right across the province.
And I know the person who called in the tip was an anonymous call, and I believe police are still trying to find out some more information. So you'd like that person to call back?
That would be great if we could get that person to call back and, you know, and work with it from there.
Okay. I appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, clearing the rail blockade, police move in to end the protest in Ontario that has stopped rail traffic for nearly 3 weeks now. The latest on what happens next is coming up after the break. And tomorrow is Shrove Tuesday, and a few of the wise men are here with everything you need to know about their pancake breakfast tomorrow morning at Smitty's in Charlottetown. They'll join Jay, who is eating, as you can see, just ahead on Compass. Protesters in Eastern Ontario have been blocking a main rail corridor in the area for almost 3 weeks now, but today, police stepped in. Officers arrived at the protest site to enforce a court injunction and clear the tracks, but it did not go peacefully. The CBC's Olivia Stefanovic has been at the protest site all day.
It took just moments for dozens of police officers to move in on the Mohawk camp. Reporters were held back while brief scuffles took place. This cell phone video, taken by a Mohawk media network, shows what was perhaps the most heated parts of the confrontation. Several demonstrators were arrested, and even in the back of a police truck, they remained defiant. Hours later, with police still on scene, their snowplow, the centerpiece of this Mohawk protest, was hauled away by police after 19 days facing the rails. The protest has been in support of Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs in BC fighting a natural gas pipeline on their territory. They are insisting police leave their land. Until their demands are met, remaining Mohawks here say they won't leave either.
It's going to stay here for as long as it takes for the RCMP to get out. It's time for Canada to know what it's like to be invaded.
This demonstrator says Canada's relationship with Indigenous people is at stake.
Reconciliation doesn't come at the end of a gun. You can't give us an ultimatum to leave somewhere that we've been for hundreds of years, that we were given as a gift by the Queen.
While the raid unfolded on Parliament Hill, the concern was about the economic impact of the blockade.
Over the past number of days, we've been working with rail carriers to ensure that many trains continue to use alternate routes to get through, and that's one of the reasons we've been able to avoid some of the most serious shortages.
For the opposition, today's police action came too late.
I believe that it shouldn't take 19 days shortages for propane, 1,500 people losing their job, countless of small businesses losing out, laying people off, cutting back in hours, to have the law applied in this country.
As the police operation continues, protests flared up in other parts of the country, and demonstrators here say even though parts of the camp are coming down, this could be far from over. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Tyne-Danica, Ontario.
There have been several other protests across the country today in support of the Wet'suwet'en, including on Parliament Hill. A few hundred people, most of them youth activists, marched through Ottawa's downtown core ahead of a rally in front of the Parliament buildings. Demonstrators from across central Canada came to take part in the event. They want Ottawa to meet the demands of the hereditary chiefs, including the departure of all RCMP from Wet'suwet'en territory in northern BC. Now let's talk about the politics of all of this. Julie Van Dusen, as you can see, joins me now live from Ottawa. Good to see you, Julie. So just how will the arrest of protesters in Ontario today affect the government's plan for reconciliation with First Nations?
Right. Well, Louise, reconciliation certainly was not in the air when the police moved in, as you saw in Olivia's report, to remove barricades and arrest protesters and break up that protest camp that has been there for weeks, tying up rail traffic. The thing, it's a sharp contrast, of course, Louise, to what the Prime Minister was saying last week. This very day, a week ago, in the House of Commons, he stood and said, "I extend a hand and friendship and trust to protesters. We have to work this out together in the spirit of reconciliation." But the opposition, certainly, he's getting assailed from all sides on how he handled the removal of these barricades and what he did, whether he went too quickly or too slowly. The NDP, for sure, is saying that he did not give dialogue a fair chance. Take a listen.
When will the Prime Minister acknowledge that it's his responsibility to de-escalate, appoint a special mediator, and meet with the hereditary chiefs?
We continue to work on the important efforts of reconciliation. We continue to journey with Canadians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, along that journey, but it must be done in a responsible way.
But there certainly has been some heated moments in all this, Julie, and I know the protest in Ontario was sparked by opposition to a gas pipeline in BC, and now another big development in the resource sector, and that's Teck Resources cancelling plans for an oil sands project in Alberta. How's that playing out?
Well, it depends who you speak to. Teck Frontier's energy project, we were expecting the Trudeau cabinet to make a decision on whether it should go forward this week. But of course, Teck Frontier pulled the plug last night. Now, there are a lot of Liberals who are actually relieved about this. Sean Casey, for example, from Charlottetown being one of them. They did not want to have to explain a project that was going to increase emissions. Now, on the flip side, of course, it means jobs for Albertans, up to 10,000 jobs, and anger that is growing in the West. Teck Frontier said that this whole debate about Indigenous rights, climate change, and energy projects, it got swept up in the middle of it. So now the Conservatives are saying, Louise, that all of this is because of Justin Trudeau. His approach to energy projects, his slow approach to the barricades, it's his fault. Take a listen.
Make no mistake, Justin Trudeau killed Teck Frontier. That is beyond dispute. By empowering and emboldening these protesters, by doing nothing for 19 days.
Here's the real question, Mr. Speaker. Does this Prime Minister want Alberta in Canada or not?
So now Canada's Natural Resources Minister, Seamus O'Regan, is headed to Alberta now. He's going to meet with industry and decide, I guess, if this anger, certainly that we've been hearing about, coming from Alberta is as strong as we've been hearing about. He'll get an earful for sure when he heads out there, Louise.
Yeah, there's a deep divide there for sure. Thanks so much, Julie. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It's Julie Van Dusen. The Wise Men Pancake Breakfast is tomorrow. It's the event's 39th year. You can fill your belly and support a great cause all at the same time. Jay got the yummy details for us earlier today.
Well, tomorrow is the big day, Tuesday. Shrove Tuesday tomorrow.
Shrove Tuesday it is, all day tomorrow.
All right, so it's pancakes for breakfast in honor, of course, of Shrove Tuesday. And we have 2 pancakes, and there were, full disclosure, if you buy the breakfast from the Wise Men,
You get 2 sausages, right?
You get 2 sausages and 2 pancakes.
Okay, we're trying to track down that other sausage. We don't know what happened to it.
It was here when we got here. I'm not sure what happened.
I don't know what happened. Okay, look, I have dinner late in the day. It's a longer shift here at Compass,
go.
and I get hungry at this point in the day. So 2 pancakes, 2 sausages, and there's a beverage included in this as well?
Tea or coffee.
All right.
Comes with it.
All right, so $10 gets you a breakfast, plus your tea or coffee. And the coffee or the tea, the caffeine would be a good thing. We should give folks the time that this is taking place.
We start at 6:30 tomorrow morning. We go to 8:45. As I said, $10 each. We get a $5 coupon attached to the ticket so that they can use that at another meal at another time.
And this is at Smitty's, by the way.
This is at Smitty's, and they sponsor everything. It's at no cost to us at all.
So
all the money comes from them, goes right into our programs.
Okay, and these programs, of course, helping to support youth in our community, right?
Exactly.
And you've got Earl working the grill. Are you ready? Have you been practicing your flipping?
Practicing mentally.
Because because speed is key. You're trying to get as many folks in and out as quick as possible, right?
We will.
All right, pancakes are a great way to do that, especially on a popular day like Shrove Tuesday. So $10 gets you 2 pancakes, 2 sausages, tea or coffee. Proceeds to help out the wise men. 6:30 to 8:45 at Smitty's.
That's correct. 6:30 to 8:45.
And if I wanted to find out more information, really the best bet is show up at the door with your $10, ready to eat a great breakfast. But if I wanted to find out more information about the work that you folks do,
check our Facebook site after 7 o'clock tonight.
All right. Oh yeah, we will be sharing this, of
Charlottetown
course.
Wiseman.
Charlottetown Wiseman, and it's the spelling of Wiseman. We've got to be clear. Not that you're not wise, but it's.
We could be otherwise, but anyway, yeah, it's Y''S.
There you have it. Y''S. Wiseman, Charlottetown Wiseman on Facebook to get all the details and show up at Smitty's tomorrow morning starting at 6:30 for that fundraising pancake breakfast.
All right, if you'd like to be on our community segment, get in touch with us here at CBC PEI. 629-6480 is the number to call, or you can email us compass@cbc.ca. There's a jump in coronavirus cases in Europe tonight. Health officials there are scrambling to limit the spread after Italy reported more than 200 cases. The CBC's Renee Filipponi has more.
Police blocked the way in and out of nearly a dozen towns across northern Italy. This is the first major outbreak in Europe. and the lockdown is an attempt to stop it from spreading. This officer says they are following instructions, blocking roads and asking people not to leave their homes. Behind the barricades are mostly empty streets. Fear is keeping many inside. Some venture out, only to line up for masks, which are limited in supply. The concern goes beyond Italy's borders. A train was stopped traveling to Austria because 2 passengers had a fever. It turned out not to be the coronavirus. Austria's chancellor says they are expanding checks at airports and borders and will stop trains if needed. The World Health Organization has sent a team to Italy.
This is about good risk management. It's about good communication between states. It's about management and early detection of cases and their appropriate isolation and treatment. It's not about shutting borders.
It's very difficult to understand exactly how and why these infections spread.
This expert says it's unclear why Italy has seen this outbreak, adding there is no clear evidence yet. Community-wide lockdowns are the solution.
We know it transmits face-to-face social contact, a cough, a sneeze, and we know that it also transmits in hospital settings, but we just don't know what it does in the community.
The risk has driven authorities to cut short events like the Venice Carnival and close major tourist venues across the region. There is too much alarmism, this man says, which is not always justified. But the fear is real in cities like Milan. Grocery store shelves are near empty as residents stock up in case the virus spreads and more lockdowns are ordered. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, London.
Well, meanwhile, the jump in new coronavirus cases in Italy is also creating concerns to a little bit closer to home. The outbreak in there is now threatening travel plans for dozens of high school students in New Brunswick. Rachel Cave explains.
Students from several New Brunswick high schools, including St. Malachy's behind me, have been getting ready to leave for Italy later this week. But today, some of them were told that those plans may have to change because of the spread of COVID-19. Northern Italy is now reporting more than 200 cases of coronavirus infections and is taking measures to stop it from spreading by closing schools and businesses in the Lombardy region, which includes Milan.
Initially, we're going to have our flight go into Milan, and we're traveling directly to Florence.
Grade 12 student Patrick McDonald is supposed to fly out of St. John on Thursday, but he says students and chaperones were told this morning that the trip may be canceled.
It's a pretty disappointing idea that we won't be able to go. I'm not sure yet, so I'm being hopeful.
Right now we're going to Santa Croce, the most famous Florentine church.
The trips are run by EF Tours, and it says groups have the option of changing their trips or postponing them, or they can ask for a refund in the form of a travel voucher. The school district says these trips are not school sanctioned.
We would sanction trips that are within Atlantic Canada, Ottawa, Ontario. Some of our high schools go down as far as New York City and do theater tours and that type of thing, but not at this time international travel.
Superintendent Zoe Watson says she has informed the public health officer, Dr. Kim Barker, that students from as many as 5 high schools are participating. Now it's up to the group leaders to decide what they want to do. EF Tours says they can decide as late as the day of departure. Rachel Cave, CBC News, St. John.
And if you're getting married in the near future, you should be warned. The coronavirus outbreak in China may affect your big day because wedding suppliers are starting to experience delays, which could get even worse in the coming months. Adil Musa reports.
Well, many wedding dress designers and vendors depend on factories in China to produce their goods, but factory closures due to the coronavirus have caused delays, and that has some in the wedding industry worried about whether their orders will arrive on time, if they arrive at all. Danica Labonte is a wedding dress consultant at Dominique Lebec Bridal in Ottawa. She says custom dresses made to order normally take up to 6 months to arrive, but the coronavirus outbreak has added weeks to that estimate.
in past years at this time in February, it would be no issue for us to order. And now we're really recommending that people who are getting married in August and September do purchase off the rack.
Many of the dresses at Labonte's shop come from China, and their journey to Canada since the outbreak has slowed down. Shannon Kennedy is a wedding planner in the capital. She says vendors that provide things like furniture, linens, exotic flowers, and even paper goods are also feeling the effects of the coronavirus outbreak.
So you have to think everything that we tangibly touch in our everyday to day comes from a source, and in many cases it comes from the Asian market. And so that's now trickling down from third-party manufacturers into larger national suppliers and now our local suppliers.
Kennedy says given the current circumstances, people need to manage their wedding expectations.
With everything that's happening globally, it's important to know that we might not get everything that we want, but it's still going to be amazing.
Planning a wedding can be stressful, and it's a huge financial investment. So, of course, couples want the occasion to be perfect. But with all of this uncertainty, the key now is to be flexible and to have a good backup plan. Ethel Musa, CBC News, Ottawa. The federal government is set to make it easier for some Canadians to be approved for a medically assisted death. The proposed law still needs to get through a minority parliament and the Senate.
When we are talking about medical assistance in dying, we are talking about people who are suffering, families going through some of the most difficult times of their lives.
Under proposed rules unveiled today, people who are not already close to death, will be able to ask for a doctor's help to die, but they will need to be assessed by an expert in their condition, and there will be a 90-day waiting period. Patients whose deaths are reasonably foreseeable will no longer be subject to a 10-day waiting period, and they will not have to give a second consent just before the procedure. A jury in New York has handed down its verdict in the trial of Harvey Weinstein. He was convicted on 2 of the charges against him, but was acquitted on others. Zuleika Nathu has more.
Harvey Weinstein was convicted of a criminal sexual act in the first degree, and that carries a maximum sentence of 25 years in prison. It was related to the case of former production assistant Miriam Haley, who said that Weinstein performed non-consensual oral sex on her in 2006. The other conviction was rape in the third degree, and that was related to former actress Jessica Mann, who said that Weinstein raped her in a Manhattan hotel room in 2013. Weinstein's defense team said that they will appeal the case, and the district attorney called the women who came forward heroic.
I owe, and we all owe, an immense debt to you, who had the courage beyond measure to speak your story to the world, to this courtroom, at great personal risk and in great personal pain.
We will have a very, very professional appeal done by the best and the brightest in the business, and there are a lot of issues.
Even though the jury was instructed by the judge not to look at any evidence outside of the trial and only focus on what was presented in the courtroom, this is nevertheless a landmark case for the Me Too movement, because up to now it was uncertain whether any of the changes that have been slowly happening in society with regards to the way that sexual assault survivors are being treated would translate into the place where they've often had the hardest time getting justice, the criminal justice system. And today, the Me Too movement organization Time's Up called this a new era of justice.
Of course, there is a lot of work to do, and I'm here to, being there and speak to people so that a situation like this would never happen again.
Weinstein was taken away from the courtroom in handcuffs and will remain in custody until his sentencing on March 11th. Zuleika Nathu, CBC News, New York.
2 families and several former staff have filed complaints against a nursing home owned by a major chain. They allege residents didn't receive proper care and certain hygiene practices caused those residents physical harm. Erica Johnson has this Go Public investigation.
Don Bryan says he's still haunted by how his mother suffered as a resident at this nursing home for 4 years. Sheila Bryan developed repeated bladder and yeast infections, was in so much discomfort, says her son, she scratched her skin raw.
It was frustrating and angry, like to stand there and to watch
He blames poor hygiene practices, says his mother was often left in wet diapers. He's one of 5 people who filed complaints against 2 senior staff at Extendicare Athabasca, claiming practices at the for-profit nursing home came at the expense of quality care. A complaint filed by a former nurse describes how diapers were rationed, locked away so healthcare aides had difficulty accessing extra when needed. In an email obtained by GoPublic, the director of care tells staff she's changing the access code to the room storing the diapers. The new code is not to be shared with healthcare aides, she writes, because product removal was being abused.
That's absolutely ridiculous. You know, how can you ration someone when they go to the washroom? You have no control over that.
The complaint says diaper wipes were rationed too, 1 per change, and washing the groin area with soap and water discouraged. Statistics show that during that period, the nursing home had a urinary tract infection rate of 7.5%, much higher than the national average. A healthcare advocacy organization says standards of care vary from province to province.
So this is again why we're calling for some national standards that would apply to all long-term care facilities across the country so that residents know that they could be relying on these facilities to treat them with dignity and respect.
Don Bryan says he's waiting for a decision on the complaint he filed, hoping for some kind of justice, he says, for his mother. Extendicare declined an interview request and said it disagreed with many of the allegations. It also said diapers were locked away, but briefly due to a personnel issue. And it said the home passed its most recent government audit. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Basketball icon Kobe Bryant was honored at a public memorial service in Los Angeles today. The NBA superstar, his daughter, and 7 others died in a helicopter crash last month.
We love and miss you, Boo Boo and Gigi. May you both rest in peace and have fun in heaven until we meet again one day.
Thousands of fans, celebrities, and athletes attended the packed ceremony that began with a performance by Beyoncé. The 41-year-old retired Los Angeles Lakers star is considered one of the greatest players in NBA history. On January 26, Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter were headed to a basketball tournament she was supposed to play in. The helicopter crashed into a mountainside northwest of Los Angeles, and the cause of the accident remains under investigation. On the markets today, well, it was a very bad day. Look at that number on the Dow Jones. This is the worst day in more than 2 years. And Canada's main stock index also closing 280 points lower, but over a 1,000-point drop on the Dow. And this really focuses in on fears over coronavirus and COVID-19 and the continued spread of that. The price of oil was also off today, $1.95 U.S. a barrel. Gold, $27.80 U.S. an ounce, higher. That sunshine.
I don't know why I did that.
That sunshine sure was nice today, wasn't it? It makes
Yeah.
a huge difference when the sun is out. And it was mild temperatures today, but even when it's a bit colder, I don't mind the cool, crisp, sunny weather.
Well, when it's
I
this
need
time
that
of
vitamin
year, the sun is getting so much higher in the sky. We're getting more direct rays of the sunshine, which is why even if it is colder, if it's sunny, you really do feel that heat more. And a big, big, big benchmark being reached tomorrow morning, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Official sunrise time, 7:59. Now, it varies across the island. I'm going with Charlottetown as a
Right.
bellwether, but sorry, not 7:59, 6:59.
6:59, yeah, yeah, yeah.
6:59. So we're seeing the sun officially rising before 7 a.m. Now, you start to
Nice.
see the daylight before that, but 7 a.m., not very sunny tomorrow, mostly cloudy, but temperatures up between +1 and +5 for afternoon temperatures between noon and 4 tomorrow afternoon.
All right. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Good night, PEI.